Hello and welcome to this best of 7. So this is a sponsored spotlight match. This is Blodir versus Blackheart, and it is part of the Pro Series Spotlight that is happening on Forge Alliance Forever at the moment. So today we have got a Blodir versus Blackheart match, and we are getting this underway just now. This is just slightly delayed in real-time coverage, and we are going to have a look at the map Africa. Alright, so Africa is a relatively new map in the pool. It has been played a little bit recently, and it is quite a cool map. So in the south we have got Blodir. He has gone Cybran. In fact, both players have gone Cybran. That is because Cybran is really quite strong right now, and all the pros are going for Cybran. And he is throwing down a first land factory. He's going to grab those mixers, and then he's going to head out towards that hydro. So pretty predictable build there. And up in the north we can see Cybran for Blackheart. We're probably going to see an almost identical build, which we are, and we can see how the first NG out is going to be throwing down that hydro and getting the power underway for these guys. Let's just talk about this map just a little bit. If you are not familiar with Africa, it is, well, not the actual continent Africa, but the map Africa. It's quite a cool place to play, and it's quite interesting. We've had a number of high-level games on this guy here, and they've been really quite interesting to watch. The unique thing about this, which makes it a little bit different from the other maps, is the way that the play works out with this pond up here and this pond down here, because they are big enough to get T2 Navy, and we often see destroyers and cruisers in there, and they really mix the game up a little bit. And we've also got a big crater here, and we can see just the sheer amount of reclaim floating around on this map, and that is a big target that these guys are going to fight over. So we are going to see a lot of engineers up front, and perhaps a couple of drops to get into that crater, and we're going to see quite a good fight over all of the reclaim from these guys. So we can expect a lot of land spam up the center. We can expect maybe a little bit of naval play. Not sure if these guys are quite going to have the APM to be able to throw a lot into the navy on the sides, especially when they aren't into lanes. Quite often this is a 4v4 map, and you have almost a dedicated player to putting navy in the water, but in this time these guys are, well, they may struggle just a little bit to be able to do everything they need to do to be able to pick up the ridiculous amount of reclaim and to be able to get land spam and naval spam on, but we'll see how they're going to get on. So we can see Blodir has thrown down a first land factory. He's got his air factory out, and that's going to give him a little bit of air power, and then he's going land. So he's going to get as many NGs as he can out the door. We can expect a lot of power spam and a lot of reclaim from him. Let's have a look at how Blackheart is going to get on with the same thing, but up in the north. And we can see there's actually a good amount of manual reclaim. He's going out for those trees. So Blackheart is wanting to pick up the extra energy that is going to come out of those guys. And we can see a little bit of reclaim there for mass and out and to pick up some more. So of course there is another hydro out here, which, well, there's no plans yet to take, but we can expect that to go down, because these guys will need as much power as they can get to be able to make use of all the reclaim. And if I just zoom out, we can see just the ridiculous amount of reclaim, and of course that's only showing everything above the reclaim threshold, which is about 30, I believe. And there is also going to be a whole lot of little rocks in there which don't even show up. You can see just the amount of mass there. It's quite ridiculous, and there's going to be a lot to feed these guys in their spam game. We can see Blodir is actually making a little bit of a move up with his ACU, which is a little bit, well, a little bit earlier than Blackheart, who is now doing exactly the same thing. And we can see just how many land factories he's planning to get down around those mixes. So that just is a little bit of a testament to how much land spam we can expect. So hopefully we can expect some really cool things from these guys, and hopefully a little bit of crazy play. And there is a land factory there. It looks like Blodir a little bit slower getting that down, because he does have to reclaim, because there is, again, is just so much on the map that it's going to have to be pulled up before he can get a clear pad for that factory to go down. And a scout was heading overhead for Blackheart. Unfortunately, that has not worked too well for him, because it flew right within range of an interceptor and got one-shotted out of the sky. In contrast to that, Blodir actually has the scout up here. We can see he's doing a pretty good job. We'll jump over to Blodir's view, and we can see he's got a pretty good idea now of how Blackheart's expansion efforts efforts are going. And there's actually a nice little raid. We can see there's a Mantis coming in here, and so far not a lot to actually stop that. Blackheart does have visibility because he's got those interceptors flying overhead, but so far he has not managed to get much of a land presence in that area. That first land factory has just started to go down around the hydro, but he is not going to get done, and the Mantis is going to make it in, and Blackheart is having to evac those engineers just to try and keep them alive while bringing a Mantis of his own in. There is a single one and another one coming in, so we'll see exactly how that works. With a little bit of assistance from reclaiming engineers, they might be able to take that out. I think that is exactly Blackheart's plan. So well, actually, because the Mantis is focused on those engineers, it's easily going to be a little win for Blackheart there. But it does mean a little bit of build capacity and a little bit slower expansion for Blackheart there. We can see that Blodir has managed to, well, get a reasonable foothold here, but he hasn't had any pressure applied. So he does have a Mantis and a Scout sitting there waiting to spot any raids incoming. But so far, nothing from Blackheart. So we're not seeing a lot in the early game from Blackheart in terms of applying pressure to Blodir and really stopping his reclaim game. And with a nice little mutual kill on those Mantis up there. So that is going to take both those guys out of the area. And it doesn't look like Blackheart has got anything else to defend. And Blodir has actually got 3 Mantis in there. He doesn't want to venture too close into the center here because that ACU will easily take care of those guys. But he could take the opportunity to get up into these engineers' business and take those guys out. So I'm not quite sure if we'll see some of that. And it looks like he's probably not quite aware that the ACU is sitting in the center there. Either that or he is aware that the ACU is busy building and is not going to shoot. But it looks like Blodir is just going to stray within range, and he's going to have to be a little bit careful because there's all those factories. He's not going to be able to do a lot of work, especially with that ACU in the center, and that's going to be well, he's actually nicely moved those guys off, and they're heading north, and they're going to try and see what else they can capture. It might be nice to see a little bit of a split attack here and send the Mantis off in different directions just to make sure they can capture all of those engineers and dispatch those. Excellent work here in preventing from Blackheart expanding. So having these Mantis quite a long way up the map, we can see just how far up the map Blodir is pushing, and he may have spotted this. I'm not sure that he's got a radar down just yet, but he has encountered a couple of those with his Mantis. He will be seeing that those guys are getting in there, and he may... No, he's not going to bother to move his ACU to intercept because he's got another squad of Mantis. So it looks like Blodir is actually doing a really good job of getting his spam game on, and he looks to have a little bit more on the field. Let's just have a quick count up of Mantis. So far he's got 30 on the field, and Blackheart is sitting on 15. So a really big advantage to Blodir in that early land spam game. We'll have a look at the ecos though. So Blodir is sitting on 53, Blackheart on 47 mass income, and not a lot in it in the power game. So Blodir actually looking to be in a really good early position here. He's got a lot of power, a lot of land spam already up and running, and he's able to reach out and touch Blackheart a little bit more than Blackheart is able to respond right now. We've got little groups of Mantis hitting all over the place, and Blackheart is having to follow those guys up and use some of his APM just to chase those guys down. And we can see a bomber out. We've seen very little so far in the air game. There was a little bit of scouting, a few interceptors up early on, but very little, and there was no early bombers, which is maybe a little bit unusual for a pro game. But what is this? This is a engineer transport, so it's probably not going to be anything too offensive, and it looks like it's actually just heading around all these mixes just to try and secure the area. That is not going to do particularly well on the mainland here, where there are Mantis roving around and taking out engineers that they see. Again, we see a numerical advantage here for Blodir. He's actually still managing to do really well. He does have these Mantis here in the back, and they could perhaps stand a little bit to move forward and maybe try and clear this area. Blodir probably has enough in this group to be able to take out what Blackheart has actually got up here. It's mostly engineers. There's only half a dozen, maybe 8 Mantis in that area, and there is actually still a numerical advantage for Blodir. So it looks like Blodir is still managing to hold on to that early lead. Let's just have a look at the number of land factories that Blodir's got down. He has got 12, so he's got a dozen land factories, and in contrast to that, let's look at Blackheart, who has got, well, exactly the same. So interestingly, these guys have put pretty much the same number of factories up. The ecos are pretty similar, but I suspect the difference here is actually going to be going into the eco. We can see Blackheart has been throwing quite a lot of that into T2, and he's perhaps playing a little bit of a longer game. Blodir still sitting down here. You can see a little bit of mass upgrade going on there. But we could be looking at a little bit of a reversal in the mass incomes of these guys, where Blodir was slightly ahead. He might be losing that advantage slowly as Blackheart is pushing a little bit more into the eco game. But that does, of course, depend on whether Blackheart can hold on to the territory that he's got so far, while not producing as many units as Blodir is. So that T1 land spam from Blodir is really becoming quite a problem. We can see the T2 land shift there for Blackheart, so he's obviously hoping to get the higher tech units into the action and cause problems for the land spam with Blodir. There is still enough Mantis at this point to be able to deal with a couple of Rhinos, but if they continue to pop out of the factories for Blackheart, they are going to be increasingly problematic for Blodir to deal with. And have we got a T2 land factory shift for Blodir? We've got an upgrade. Yeah, we've got the factory HQ already in place, so he is capable of pushing out some Rhinos of his own. But so far we don't actually see a lot of those guys on the field. There is a little bit over here for Blackheart, and so far unanswered, and we can see that Blodir is having to pull back his T1 army as a response to that T2, because the T2 so much more DPS packed into a small area, and while not necessarily more efficient in terms of mass, it does mean that the firepower that you get localized can easily be greater, and a couple of Rhinos can deal with a decent number of T1 by themselves. I'm not sure that it's a really good idea to charge headlong into quite that many, but it is actually still forcing Blodir back, which is interesting. He's not really keen at this point to take on those Rhinos, so he's just pulling back a little bit more, leaving a little bit more reclaim, but it looks like there's not too many engineers in the area. Blackheart is still pulling up all this mass here. No shortage of reclaim though. It's not a case yet of stealing reclaim from the other person, because there's just so much mass lying around. We can see there's been a large amount of it pulled away from their original bases, but there is still a ton of it, and especially in this crater in the center, still a lot of mass, and Blodir is actually doing a nice job of picking that up. This crater is, of course, down in the ground like that, which helps prevent direct fire from hitting stuff in there quite so easily. So of course artillery will be able to pepper away at the radar and the mixers in the center, and the engineers of course, but direct fire from Mantis and from Rhinos is going to struggle a little bit at getting over that lip and down into the crater, and there's maybe a little bit of a run by on the cards here for Blodir, so that's quite a nice little move, and we've got a corresponding one up here, so that is forcing Blackheart to respond on both sides at the same time. It looks like there's relatively even numbers, and there's some Rhinos mixed in there. Well, actually those are Wagners, because they are heading right out on into the water, and they're probably going to scoot right around the outside and pop up in the back of Blodir's base and cause him a little bit of problems. We can see here just the relative difference between T1 and T2. There was just a small group of Rhinos, and they were able to chew through a pretty significant group of T1, so Blodir really does need to step up that T2 game and focus a little bit more on getting those higher tier units out and a little bit more firepower, so that he can deal with those incoming Rhinos and now Wagners from Blackheart. So it looks like Blackheart playing a little bit more of the tech game, and he's just slightly behind on mass right now. So it looks like Blodir is managing to stay in the mass game. He's obviously got enough intel to know that this is the sort of T2 upgrade level that Blackheart is currently on, and he's, well, actually we can see an early shift to T3 there, so loyalists of course, because those guys are nice and fast and can get round the back like nobody's business, and those are going to be problematic. We must be seeing a corresponding T3 upgrade. There we go. So these guys both at 11 minutes 59, just clicking over 12 minutes, they've both shifted up to T3, and they're both going to be starting to pump out loyalists. It does look like Blackheart is still got a bit of an advantage in the center here with the number of Rhinos and Wagners that he's managed to push out so far, and that's just leaving the land spam from Blodir's initial build a little bit in the dust, and there's not a lot that Blodir can really push forward right now, so a little bit of a problem for him, and unfortunately a T1 PD on the front line is not particularly useful when there are Medusas floating around, because those guys of course do outrange that T1 PD, and will be able to sit back all day and just pepper away and take that out. We can see a little bit of wall play here. So Blodir obviously trying to clamp down on the advances from Blackheart just a little bit and put some walls down just to try and slow down those advancing units. So maybe we're seeing a little bit more of a defensive shift here from Blodir. Originally it was a really offensive play. We saw a lot of land spam going up and he was trying to get around the back and do a lot of raiding, but we've seen that drop off quite significantly, and the walls tell us that he's probably doing a little bit more defense now than offense. So he's thinking a little bit of how he's going to counter Blackheart. So Blackheart obviously being a pretty seasoned player here, we can see that he does fairly well against a lot of guys, and Blodir's been shifting up the ranks. Lately he is currently sitting on 2200 global rating according to the scoreboard. So he's doing pretty well for himself, but there's probably just a little bit in the back of his mind about being able to actually fight off Blackheart. So we'll see if that psychological advantage comes into Blackheart's favour at all, or whether the advantage is purely going to be with the loyalist spam, because those guys are just moving up and they're just going to be able to chew all the way right around the outside, and there's pretty much nothing to stop them. There's a little bit of T1, but the number of loyalists here is going to be a big problem for Blodir, and it looks like he's trying to respond. He's throwing the T2 that he's got a couple of loyalists out, but he's going to have a hard time matching the 5 loyalists that Blackheart already has at the front line. Those guys are going to be able to rip through the T1 and kind of through the T2. There's a few rhinos in the mix there for Blodir, but there are of course rhinos for Blackheart as well. So this is going to be a bit of a problem. He's focusing on this main body of the army, and that does unfortunately leave these 3 loyalists here. He's trying to respond with a little bit of T1, but half a dozen T1 units in all probability are not going to fare particularly well against 3 loyalists. So those loyalists are now going to be a problem. We can see some reactionary PD going down from Blodir. He's trying to throw those guys up just to stop those loyalists, but he's going to have a little bit of a hard time here, and he just doesn't have anything in the area. He is responding with a big wave of T1 bombers actually. He's throwing a whole lot of those guys. And how is the air power actually looking right now? We saw a little bit of an air fight earlier on. It looks like Blodir has come away reasonably well. Both these guys have got a few interceptors up, but Blodir's probably slightly stronger. So Blodir probably feels reasonably confident in being able to spam out those T1 bombers right now and not lose them all. And we've actually got another transport coming in. There is a Dragonfly. Where is it going to land? It is landing just about right on top of that factory. And there's an extra couple of loyalists, so that's really going to cement the assault here that Blackheart has on Blodir's position, and this is going to be slightly problematic. Of course, Blackheart is making really good gains in the centre here as well. He's pushing out those loyalists, being able to deal with a lot of what Blodir is throwing at him. There are, well, there's still half a dozen loyalists in that mix, and there is a nice grip coming up from Blodir, so he might just be able to repel this, but he's still having a really hard time just dealing with everything that Blackheart is throwing at him. He's got fronts on the left, he's got fronts on the centre, and Blackheart has got pretty reasonable control of the navy on this side. I'm not sure that the frigates are able to do a heck of a lot right now because they can't walk on land. If he was to shift up the D2 navy, of course that gives him sailings which can wander up onto the beach once they are done in the water, but this is a real problem for Blodir. There are still 4 loyalists in here. There's a little bit of air in support from Blackheart, just trying to take out those bombers. I'm not sure that, well, there's still a few interceptors for Blodir. He's not got them into the mix, so it looks like he may, well, he's just bringing them in now, so he has just responded with those. It looks like still just a little bit of an advantage for Blackheart, and that's going to be a pretty hard loss for Blodir to take, to lose all those bombers and that air control, as well as losing this expansion. We can see the effect of that assault reflected in the scoreboard. We're sitting on 152 mass income for Blackheart and only 72 for Blodir, so he's really starting to fall behind in the mass game. He's sitting at a 2-to-1 disadvantage at the moment, and that is going to be extremely problematic. There is of course a lot of reclaim that he can pick up to maybe help get back into it, but that relies on him to being able to re-secure this area and get the rebuild underway while taking continued assaults from Blackheart. With the kind of mass differential that we can see at the moment, it's going to be a very, very difficult task for Blodir to be able to come back from this one and take out all of the spam that Blackheart is currently throwing at him. He's got a good amount of loyalists here. We can see that he's got a few more loyalists in the group from Blodir, and that will be able to deal with these guys coming down from Blackheart, especially because they're already significantly damaged from the battle we just saw earlier, and that is going to take those out. So that will be the end of the force in the left for Blackheart, and leaves a little bit more reclaim there for Blodir to pick up, but Blodir is still sitting at a massive disadvantage. If he can make use of some of these raids, because Blackheart does have a little bit of an undefended area up the top here as well. So it might be possible for Blodir to get in behind, but he's quickly running out of time because there is a big swarm of loyalists coming in, and that potential raiding group that he had sitting there is going to actually just die instead of being able to get any raiding underway, and that is going to they're going to have to be pulled back, and that is the end of that. So there is not a lot of opportunity left for Blodir to get any raiding in and try and do some damage to Blackheart's eco in the same way that Blackheart got in and damaged his eco. We can see that the engineers are back in here and they're trying to throw together some semblance of an economy over this side of the map, but it is going to take time to rebuild that, and he's still sitting on a big disadvantage. He's actually dropped down to 40 mass income. That is a power stall. We can see he's just come back online. He's got his RAS completed, and he is now going to be sitting pretty well for power. That could indicate a little bit of a shift for T3 Air, so perhaps he's realised that he can't fight the lat spam particularly effectively, and he might be going for some strat bombers to be able to just whittle away the amount of land that Blackheart currently has, and he's going to have to get that online pretty soon because Blackheart's got a pretty formidable group here. There are a lot of loyalists in that mix, and they are going to be able to punch through just about anything that Blodir has. He's managed to muster a reasonable number of loyalists. Let's just check those numbers and see how many we've got. We've got 29 loyalists there for Blodir, and Blackheart is sitting on 31. So Blodir actually managing to even up the numbers in terms of actual loyalists on the field. Of course, that doesn't really make up for the mass income differential, although he's doing a fairly good job. That could be reclaimed, so he's still sitting at maybe 40-50 mass behind, and that is a little bit of a problem. We can see a Monkey Lord actually going down, so a Monkey Lord will be able to deal with loyalists reasonably effectively if you can get that, but because the eco advantage is sitting with Blackheart, I wouldn't be surprised if Blackheart sneakily had a Monkey Lord underway somewhere. Well, I'm not actually spotting one. Let's just see what kind of intel Blackheart actually has of the Blodir camp over here, and he doesn't. Well, he's just managed to get a strat bomber out. So Blackheart has also moved for T3. Yeah, we can see Sam's up for Blodir, but he's probably managed to get enough intel to notice that there is a monkey going down. I'm not sure if he has, but that monkey is going up reasonably quickly. It's now into the yellow, sitting on 31 out of 45,000 hit points, and that will be done reasonably soon, but I'm not sure it's going to be in time to save Blodir's efforts here, because there is a large force of loyalists moving down. They are currently tearing their way through what Blodir has, although because the loyalists are a little bit more spread out for Blackheart, I'm not sure if he has enough concentrated in the centre here to really get through. Well, it looks like just about even numbers, and there is a little bit of T1 and T2 in support for Blackheart, so it's not going to be quite the overrun that we thought maybe might happen, but it is going to be enough to secure the area for Blackheart. We can see even cheekily drop engineers in to immediately pick up that reclaim, so he's going to be causing a lot of problems. The big difference here though is Blodir is down on numbers because he hasn't been able to produce as many loyalists, because he's putting all of his eco into this Monkey Lord, and if that Monkey Lord can get finished without this front line collapsing, then that's actually going to put him in a pretty good position, because that Monkey Lord will be able to rip through these T3 units here. It'll be able to vet up on them, and that's going to provide something pretty powerful that Blodir has that Blackheart just doesn't have an answer to yet though. Although if he does see it anytime soon, he will be able to build a reactionary Monkey Lord, because he does have that superior eco, and we can actually see some whalers out on the field, so he's opted for T3 gunships, so he's pretty secure in his air game right now. He's got that T3 air. We can see a little cloud of ASF hovering around there. It's just the 4 of them, but in contrast to Blodir's air, there is not a lot going on, and Blodir's actually going for a Soul Ripper next, which is an interesting play given that Blackheart clearly has the upper hand in the air game. So we can see the extra energy that Blodir is producing from that RAS upgrade is mainly going into building experimentals, and he's not putting it into the air. We might have expected to see a T3 air game, but we can see that he's actually not got a lot on the field right now, and he's not looking like he's planning to get to T3 air, so he's perhaps just trying to counter the ASF and strat bombers with SAMs, and we can see here this is what we're talking about with the walking Salems. So once they've finished in the water, they can sprout legs and wander up onto the beach, and they can just walk around with their decent range main cannons and cause just a little bit of mayhem. And I think Blackheart is probably not going to get too far inland with these guys, because there is a bit of T2 wandering around here for Blodir, but it's still a nice little trick nonetheless, and not doing too badly. We had a nice little raid up the top here. There was a number of those fast loyalists. They managed to get up and around the back, doing a little bit of damage, but that big pack of whalers has sprung in from Blackheart, and they've really dealt to that. And those 4 or 5 whalers, they pack quite a bit of DPS, and they are going to be able to tear through any air units. Well, any units that do not have any anti-air and they are not protected. And well, the 5 whalers are now moving in. The plan may just be to go and start peppering that Monkey Lord. Monkey Lord has a little bit of AA. There are a few bounces around to try and help out, but the whalers are going to be able to rip through those guys reasonably quickly because Blodir just doesn't have a lot in the air, and we can see the ASF floating around just providing a little bit of support, and those whalers are just sitting there and destroying what Blodir's got. So not a lot of reaction that Blodir can do right now. He's brought those interceptors in, but they are of course only Tech 1. They are not going to last very long at all, and we can see even the Monkey Lord getting stunned there, and Blodir has actually given up this. He is not going to wait for the end of that. He knows that wasn't a snipe, was it? No, surely not. Well, that's the end of that game. A little bit anticlimactic at the end, and that is the end of it. So that Monkey Lord down to into the yellow. There's still a big pack of loyalists, and those whalers, there's just nothing much that he can do. That Monkey Lord was about to go down. That was basically the last hopes that Blodir had to be able to punch through with that monkey, but there's just too much, and 0 air support for Blodir, and that unfortunately is the end of the game. So let's throw up a GG, and that is the end of that one.